Is this what you wanted?
Happy Labor Day weekend, everybody. Welcome to the newest episode of MAFF'S Movie Show. I'm your host, as always, some typical white guy from Staten Island. And today we're going to talk about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the newest Marvel movie that introduces us to, you guessed it, a character named Shang-Chi. Where does he come from? What is his power set? What does he bring to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Well, you're just going to have to find out in the movie, because this is a spoiler-free review. And the only thing I can really say about this is that it's the newest character. It's an origin story, so you have to learn all about this character, and the antagonist is his father, who was played by Tony Leung, a legendary actor. He's basically the real Mandarin. Back in the day, people were expecting Iron Man to fight the Mandarin in his trilogy of movies, and they kind of set up the Ten Ring organization that is then fleshed out in this movie. But back then, they set it up that they were going to make him a villain eventually, and they teased that in the third movie only to do something different, and a lot of fans were disappointed with it. I really liked Iron Man 3, and I really liked the twist, but to each his or her own. Anyway, I guess this is Marvel's way of basically giving back to the fans and being like, well, listen, what happened back then, it's water under the bridge now. Here is the real character presented with an actor that is well regarded throughout the entire industry of film. And yeah, I actually really enjoyed this movie, but it does have its formulaic issues and flaws that I think hold it back from being a really great movie. They do just enough to make it feel fresh, enough to make it feel like, oh, it's worth seeing in theaters and worth watching in general. Director Destin Daniel Cretton, who directed Short Term 12 many years ago, he does a really great job of grounding these characters and really making you care about them throughout all the formulaic issues with the movie when it comes to just introducing characters, introducing action sequences, which I'll get into those too. The action is some of the strongest stuff in this movie as well. But then when you get to the third act, where it gets to the point where I feel like it could be numbing when it comes to the final battle action sequences, at least you really care about who is involved in these fights. And I think that's a testament to the filmmaking and directing on display from Mr. Cretton, because he knows how to really establish family dynamics, character arcs, and bring a relatable connection with our main character, Shang-Chi, played by Simu, as well as the people surrounding him. In a post-Endgame world where it feels like it was a conclusive finale for 10 years of movies, and a lot of people basically just jumped off the train after that, and I talked about this in a previous episode, I'll talk about it here again, where is the superhero fatigue going to set in eventually? At what point do we stop seeing these Marvel movies and just Marvel Cinematic Universe content really, I hate calling it content, but you know what I mean, where it just it's so ubiquitous in popular culture right now. When is that going to slow down? And it doesn't seem that way, because this movie made over $80 million for Labor Day weekend. It broke records this weekend, and people really enjoying watching this character on screen. So we're definitely going to see more of him. And between the Eternals in November and Spider-Man coming out in December, assuming that those dates stay the same, those movies are both going to make big money, especially Spider-Man, going to be a record breaker for Christmas records. Especially if what is being talked about is true. Anyway, so Shang-Chi is a really enjoyable movie. It's entertaining. The charismatic actor in Simu, I really liked him, even though there are some moments where I feel like his acting could be a little stoic and a little wooden facially. I think he has his heart in the right place, and I think casting him was smart, because he does bring that charm. And I can see people really growing into liking him as a character, even if they don't really like him right away. People around him are also really great. Tony Leung brings some of the best dynamics in acting for this world of Marvel when it comes to villains. And your hero is only as strong as his villain, in my opinion, when it comes to these movies. And having a strong villain really helps elevate the narrative. And this is one of those movies where you really do care about the villain in the Mandarin, and you understand where he's coming from emotionally when it comes to his motivation of wanting to do what he wants to do without getting into spoilers. So when things start taking a turn, you honestly feel the emotion there. And when things start happening with his character and you start to understand more about his MO, it felt really genuine to me. This movie, in its character moments, feels very genuine. In regards to the action, I think it's really well choreographed, and there's a real rhythm to the action when it comes to the camera work and syncing it with the movements of characters, the way they utilize their environments to attack and defend from each other's attacks. Simu, you actually see him in camera doing these stunts, which is really fun to see. It reminds me of The Matrix with Keanu and Florence Fishburne. and Carrie-Anne Moss, just to name an example on the top of my head, seeing actors actually doing these stunts really helps a lot in keeping your audience engaged with these movies. And especially, like, the action in the first two halves of this movie, incredible. For what we've seen in the MCU so far, it also, in a way, I think, a really accessible gateway drug to other action and martial arts movies, from your Jackie Chan's and your Jet Li's, and even like the Raid movies of most recently. I also think it's easy for supporting characters to get lost in the shuffle when it comes to the main story, and having actors being placed in movies just to have a singular purpose when it comes to maybe action or comedy. But I liked all the supporting actors in this movie. The actress who plays the sister, I'm not even going to try to say her name because I'm going to botch it completely. First acting role ever, she's great in this movie. I also really like the actress who plays the mother of Shang-Chi. I also like Awkwafina, who I thought was going to be just like this singular comedic role just to instill humor into the movie and be ha 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 ha. But I actually liked her character in this, and she has a fairly fun side arc that does actually have some oomph to it. The legendary Michelle Yeoh has a small role in this, and I honestly wanted more from her. Didn't get enough of her, and I'm sure we'll get more of her when we get to, I'm sure, an eventual Shang-Chi sequel. But to reiterate what I mentioned before briefly, I think what holds this movie back from being great is the formulaic tendencies from an MCU movie, like the bullet points of what makes a Marvel movie at this point. It's the skeleton bones that everybody knows. If you've seen every Marvel movie since the beginning from 2008 on, you know how these movies work, and most of them have a conventional way of telling their story. And that happens here a lot, where it comes to, we gotta have a quip here, gotta have a joke here, gotta have a flashback here, gotta have a final battle that has a lot of CGI and a lot of green screen backgrounds that if you notice these things, it's very apparent. For me, I kind of just check out because I've seen this 100 times before. But again, the difference with this movie is that in those final battles, where like you kind of just get lost in like the madness of this, like all this stuff happening at once, you still care about all the characters in the fight. And that's what makes a big difference here, is that for those pivotal moments with these characters fighting, you care about what's going on with them. And that's what Marvel has and still seems to be doing right, is really treating these characters with respect so that people can fall in love with them and want to see more of them, so that we can get your subsequent sequels. So Disney can keep making money. And not to make another episode that pertains particularly to a topic that I mentioned and talked about already about a month ago, but I do wonder, truly, what's going to happen with Marvel going forward, because it seems like the next couple movies are, well, aside from Eternals, or like these big event movies like your Spider-Man and your Doctor Strange and your Guardians 3, like some of these movies are big events. And I'm wondering how, like, the story they're telling, I'm interested in seeing what they're doing. I see what they're trying to do, I think, and what they're going towards, and I like what they're doing, and it's going to be fun, even if it's a mess. I'm sure it's going to be fun. But I wonder how long audiences could really keep going with this. And I wonder how far into this next decade Marvel really dominates the way they have been. To me, it seems like they're not going anywhere anytime soon because of how successful they've been with Black Widow and Shang-Chi. I've already forgotten about Black Widow, being completely honest. It's escaped my mind after like 2-3 weeks. I've already forgotten about it. It's an okay movie. And I hate to say that because I love Scarlett Johansson. And they finally gave her a movie like the character of Black Widow, but it's just like... But I do think that people will return to Shang-Chi genuinely, because there is a lot there behind the formulaic flaws. And I think Simu Liu is a fun actor to watch on screen. The action is way more entertaining than I'm giving it credit for. And I'm glad that Marvel is letting directors and stunt crews do different things instead of just relying on a background that could be created in a computer somewhere. When that does still happen at the end of this movie, you do have sequences that you can go back on and really appreciate the artistry that went into making these sequences happen. I say if you have any interest in watching these Marvel movies, I would recommend checking out Shang-Chi. If by now you don't like these movies, there's no reason for you to watch this one, because it's not going to change your mind. The movie breaks free a little bit from what you would expect, but at the end of the day, it's still the same thing. So it's really, at that point, you know what you're getting, so that's where I leave it to you. If you're watching this, if you are on the fence, that's where you should weigh your options there. But I say it's way better than Black Widow, and I think it's a better step forward for the future of Marvel movies than Black Widow was. And we'll see how Eternals and Spider-Man do later this year. But I now want to know from you guys, speaking about you guys, my faves, my besties, what did you think of Shang-Chi if you saw it? Do you regard it as one of the top tier Marvel movies, origin movies, just Marvel movies in general? Or do you regard it in like the lower tier? Like, how do you feel about the movie? Are you excited for the future of this character? Speaking of Simu, I found it on Twitter today that he used to be a stock photo actor. These photos are sending me. I wonder if he got paid enough to pay rent every month for those. As always, thank you again for sticking around to watch these videos week to week. I really appreciate everybody viewing, and I really appreciate you supporting. And if you haven't already, you could do, all the usual stuff. You could subscribe, ring the bell, comment down below, share around, do what you want to do. It'll make me happy, whether you do it or not. I just appreciate that you're here at all. And if you have a drink in hand, I just finished a Jack and Coke. Cheers. I'll see you guys next week with a new episode, either reviewing a movie or two, or talking about something that happened during the week. We'll see what happens this week in the movie news. Hasn't been anything too crazy, too spicy. I'm still waiting for that Matrix trailer. Movie releases in 3 months. Where is it, Warner Brothers? What are you holding out on? Like, just release the damn thing. What are you waiting for? Why? Why? Like, sorry, Mark Wahlberg, just do it. What are you waiting for? Come on. See you guys next week. Love you all. Take care. Have a great Labor Day. Bye.